embezzlements at the county and all this stuff. It's like we have to keep our heads above water and be civil. That's all there is to it. We can agree to disagree and go on with life.
2 minutes. Goodness gracious.
I'm hoping we can get this meeting over for sure by 7, because I got a game to watch.
What game? Was that Portland?
Portland tonight, yes.
Did they win the other day?
Pardon me?
They won, didn't they, the other day?
Yes, they did. Yeah, they won by 12. I think it was the biggest margin of any of the first round games. So all of a sudden they clicked a couple weeks ago, and it's like, okay, now's the time.
Recording in progress.
Okay.
So good morning or good evening, everyone. This is welcome to the Monday, May 24th, 2021 Albany City Council work session. Can we have Gabe call the meeting to order, please?
Can call the roll. Mayor Alex Johnson II.
Here.
Councilors Olson.
Here.
Novak. Bartholomew. Kopczynski.
Here.
Bessie Johnson.
Here.
And Smith.
Here.
4 councilors present, Your Honor.
Excellent. We did have, I gotta find it. We did have people sign up to speak, business from the public. Let me find that memo. There we go. And so business from the public, persons wanting to address the council during business from the public and or provide written materials for the public record must register to speak and attach materials at the web address posted and then before noon on the day of the meeting. And we had some information sent in. I'm going to read the script now. Business from the public is for persons wishing to address the council. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes unless extended by the mayor. Councilors should hold their comments until business from the council. All written material has been forwarded to the councilors and entered in the public record. Instructions for getting copies of the public records is on the city website under business from the public. The following persons have submitted items for the record. Jonathan, I believe Ike of Albany regarding sewer SDC fees. And the following persons signed up to speak. Laura Herman from Albany and Noreen Collins from Albany. So the first speaker, Laura, are you available to speak with us today?
Yes, I'm here.
Please turn your camera on and let's have a conversation.
There you go. Okay.
Please tell us who you are and why you want to speak to us tonight.
Yeah, I'm Laura, and I own Cracklin Wood Fired Pizza. And since we're discussing food trucks again tonight, I just wanted to talk for 3 minutes. So I think the new code that Officer Shandell is presenting now for the majority of food trucks is going to be really good for the growth of Albany and the growth of food trucks within Albany moving forward. The current system causes frustration amongst most food trucks owners and the city staff because the rules are so broad. They're kind of interpreted differently depending on who you talk to because they're so vague, I guess is a better word. The current system is only allowing a food truck to sell for 120 days a year within the city. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me, especially for me. I'm paying a large lease every month so that I can sell on my property when I want, like any normal business. I don't think it should matter how many days I want to sell pizza to people. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So his new code allowing us to open full time is really like a positive step forward. So because I don't think we're providing anything except a positive impact. So yeah. Yeah, and also there was something brought up last time about a question if we pay taxes, and I just wanted to reiterate that, yes, we pay taxes like every citizen and every business owner everywhere. We pay taxes. The only people who don't would be nonprofits and churches, for the best of my knowledge. I also wanted to say, if there's any other questions regarding food trucks, I'm a subject matter expert in food trucks. Leah's here, she's a subject matter expert, and any other food truck owners are here, and I'm sure we're all happy to like discuss whatever your concerns are in depth. So I'm here to call on if you have any questions. And so I just wanted you guys to know that, and thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Laura. Really appreciate your time today. All right, we have to hold comment till business from the council, and this looks like a pretty long meeting from looking at the agenda, but if you're still here and they have questions, I'm definitely sure they'll ask. All right, thank you so much. Next up is Noreen Collins from Albany. Please tell us who you are and what you're here for.
My name is Noreen Collins, and I'm here as well for the food cart guidelines, the proposed guidelines. And I spoke with Chris earlier today. My biggest concern was making sure that we get a grace period to where we can actually meet, to give us time to adjust to the new requirements. And Chris said we would begin in 30 days. So that was my biggest concern. And then the new food truck proposal has each cart's allowed 2 picnic tables. And if there's any way to extend that, especially right now with COVID, even if we just made it like maybe some special exceptions for this summer. I know lots of people that are still don't want to go out to restaurants to eat. So this gives them an option to eat outside, social distance, and to still promote our businesses and to keep us all afloat. I mean, right now, obviously, the food truck world, my side, I do the second side of it, where I do fairs and festivals and large events, and we're not going to see that very much of that this year. There are a couple of county fairs that are going to happen, but we really having the business opportunity on these food truck lots is definitely helps out a bunch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Noreen. So council, during business from the council, if you have questions, if Ms. Collins and Ms. Herman are still here, please address your questions at that time. Well, thank you very much. Revised food cart code unit, mobile food unit code, compliance officer Christian Dell, pages 2 through 10. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilors, can I get screen share, please?
You have it by default, Chris. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Are you guys seeing the PowerPoint up there?
Not yet. I haven't seen it.
Let me see if I get it pop up there.
Not yet.
I don't know why it's not popping up. Sorry. Well, I guess I'll just go into it. For some reason, it's not letting me share it.
What are you trying to share, Chris?
The PowerPoint, or Holly, can you pop it up there by chance, since you have a copy of it?
I can do that. If go ahead and start, Chris, with your presentation, and I will pull it up. It'll take me about 30 seconds.
Sorry about that. Coming back to food carts, there's lots of reasons we needed this code. Some were outlined by Laura. Going back into August of 2016, this actually was brought to council regarding food carts within the city and kind of guidance for that. At that time, it was kind of looked at as not something staff hours could be put into. So it was decided that we stick with the 3 kind of paths that we are currently using without this code, which would be a transient merchant license, which really wasn't developed for food carts. 120-day process that takes planning time to get through. And then if that didn't fall in, then the other process would be through planning as well as kind of a temporary. So I just get it up there. If you want to just go to the next slide. So from those conversations with City Council, there was directions given to staff, which was to require proof of registration of business, the state and county departments, verifying disposal methods, verification through Albany Fire, planning reviews, public works, transportation, utility oversight, pretty much the making sure everyone was on the up and up and we weren't having quote unquote roach coaches, that kind of stuff, or people dumping in our waterways. Next slide, please. So looking at our current practices and the barriers, there's a lot of oversight. I mean, there's no oversight at the state and county levels. They give us a 30-day permit. There's some talk between departments, but not a lot. There's nobody going and checking with the state and county to make sure those are turned in with the packet. If they do go for the 120-day, there has been multiple complaints of kind of a varying implementation of that code. What's allowed on one site may be allowed on the other. And then again, the AMC 5.10 was not originally developed for that business model, so it's kind of hard to fit within that and still allow those mobile food units to thrive and grow, which is ultimately kind of the goal, because we want these people to grow and maintain enough business that maybe they want to make a brick and mortar, and or if they don't, that they still are able to contribute to the city and you know, the overall needs of the public. So if you want to go to the next one. So with this code, there was, I mean, more oversight than any of the codes I've brought forth. We went through all these departments: police, fire, parks and rec, community development, public works, environmental services, city manager's office, transportation. We talked to Lynn County, environmental health, the mobile food unit owners and operators, and then the Oregon Mobile Food Association. I also talked to multiple other cities, but I just didn't want to list them all out there. And then we'll get to this part. I'm just going to kind of go through the code a little bit and what we brought in to try to make the city's needs and the mobile food cart needs kind of meld together into what I think is a pretty good code and well thought out. So I'll jump around a little bit. If I miss something that you guys wanted to talk about, just push me back. I'm going to go in order, but I'm going to skip some areas that I don't think really need clarification. So so in 5.06030 through 5.06050, which talks about the permit requirements for mobile food units, for property owners and mobile food pods, I think this is the hardest thing to kind of grasp when looking at codes like this, and I know it was for me, is that there's actually multiple things we're trying to regulate here, which can make it a little hard to do and what took so long. So we have mobile food units, the actual truck itself, and we have the individual property owners. Now those property owners may have different wants as well, be it a pod with multiple food carts or more than one, or if they just want to allow one food cart on their thing. So we have to look at all three of those in different lenses to see what part of the code they fit within. So these sections kind of define what path they're going to take forward throughout the code. So following that is the exemptions. This was important because we do have multiple things throughout the city, like the farmers market, Art and Air Festival, and all those that have a lot of food carts come in from outside the city to, you know, contribute to those events, but they might not be here for that much time where they want to get a permit. Therefore, we don't want to diminish those carts coming into the city. We want them to still come and contribute and not be shied away by an over aggressive code. So we allowed variances for if they're only within the city for 2 or less days within a 30-day period. Like ice cream trucks and those that drive around, if they're only in a spot for less than 10 minutes, they don't need a permit. Events that are closed to the public, because I did have a few areas or agencies reach out to me asking about if they had certain trucks from around the state come to their location, would they need a permit? And these were all closed events just for employees. The farmers market, like I talked about, stuff that the city hosts, and other events at the Lynn County Fairgrounds. And I think that, at least from my conversations with the food truck groups and city staff and other agencies that put on those events, that pretty much encompassed all of their needs and still allows those things to flourish. If we jump to 5.06080, this is the actual application for the property and the permit for the mobile food unit. Again, we're trying to separate the two because property owners are responsible for their property and mobile food units are responsible for their unit. And we wanted the property owners who wanted the food trucks to come to their lot to be able to get a blanket application that allows anybody that holds a permit to come to the property. So for each food truck that they have rotating in, if it's one, they wouldn't need to get a different permit for each one. They just get their property permitted. And if the truck's in that spot and they have a permit through the city, then they don't have to worry about a bunch of different applications being turned in, which reduces staff time, but also allows for that kind of commerce to commence. And then looking at the mobile food unit permit itself, really just took into consideration all of the previous concerns back in 2016 from our last conversation that we met, the concerns you guys had, liability insurance, waste disposal, all of those things, and put that into our application. And this is just really holding them accountable for what the city and state, or sorry, county and state would, but making sure they're operating within those guidelines inside of our city, and that they're on a lot that has been approved already. Within the lot approval, just because there was some concerns that certain property owners wouldn't want that to go through that process, we do allow the mobile food unit owner, if they get a signed off approval, to also go through that process, so that we're not trying to hinder them if a property owner doesn't want to do it. Jumping down to general standards, 56110. Again, the whole point of a mobile food card is that they remain mobile. I had a conversation today with Leah from the Mobile Food Unit Association regarding how Oregon's unique in that, where a lot of food trucks stay non-mobile, but they are still considered a mobile food truck. So maintaining that within these standards, that they're movable, licensed and operable to be on the street, they're not taking off their wheels. That's really what this section goes over. And then also bringing in the fire concerns that some city councilors had brought up in the past and at the last meeting, talking to the fire department on what their minimum clearances would be, but also allowing variances for manufacturer guidelines of their generators and what those safety standards would be. We're not setting a blanket rule. We allow them to fall back to the manufacturer guidelines. And then what was brought up at the last meeting, we talked about overhangs and providing some type of shelter. And originally that was going to be during winter months only, but we did extend that to be a 12 by 12 year round with a heating unit, but it needs to be removed and stored. Sure, go ahead.
A couple councilors have questions. Could you please,
look for those? I didn't see the hand raising things.
Do you see them now? So I think Councilor Konsinski was first, and then Councilor Novak.
Thank you, Chris. I'm noticing under that section 110, item number 7 says any additional lighting shall be integral to the MFU.
Yeah.
Can I infer that that means if they could plug it into their generator, they're good to go?
No, so through the mobile food unit code, the state standards, anything that's integral integral is attached to the actual cart itself. So you'll see carts with lighting that's like over the top of the mobile unit or somehow attached to it, that's what it would be required to be.
So basically, strings of lights, et cetera, would not be allowed under this process.
No, they would not.
Thank you.
Sorry, and since I can't see the hand raising on my
Councilor
screen
Novak.
for some reason.
Councilor Novak is next.
Yes, thank you. I did review this and it could be that I just missed it, but I am curious about waste disposal, the grease and the oils.
Mhm.
What sort of, how have you dealt with that in the code changes?
So when they obtain their county licensing, they have
Mhm.
to provide evidence on how they're getting rid of all of that, those items. So within this, when they get their permit, they have to provide me with that documentation on how they're disposing of their gray or black water oils and such. And it also calls out our, later in the code, it'll call out our prohibited discharges and not dumping within the storm drain system, public streets,
Okay,
that kind of
good.
stuff.
That's important. I just wondered if it differed in any way from what a brick and mortar is required to do, or if it's
No.
the same, or, you know.
No, and I verified because some trucks will use the name is escaping me, but they'll cook and make
Oregon
food in
oils.
other areas. So, and when those buildings that they're cooking out of are licensed, they have to have grease interceptors put in and all of that stuff before they could be licensed as well. And sorry, the name's escaping me on that.
Thank you. Councilor Novak, did you get your question?
Thank you. I think so. I think so. If it turns out that I need further clarification, I will most assuredly ask. Thank you.
Excellent. Councilor Johnson, you are next up.
Yes, Chris, I really appreciate the work you put into this, and I think it's going to be a lot easier for the business owners plus the staff, because you have more of a lot more guidelines to go. But two questions, actually three. Under 506.060, it says that they can be for no more than 2 days within any 30-day period. Now, the fairs and the air and art festivals are more than 2 days. So should that, I mean, is 2 adequate for when they come in for the fairs and stuff?
So the 2 days is on, so yes, they will be. So the Art and Air Festival, River Rhythms, all that stuff, those are all put on by Albany Parks and Rec. So if you look under section 5, under the same section, any event hosted by the city of Albany is exempt from an MFU permit. So that doesn't have a day guideline on there.
Yeah. And
the same with the Lynn County Fairgrounds. So the Lynn County Fair and all that wouldn't need anything for their trucks either.
Okay, all right. And then when you said one permit for a landowner means that that they don't have to get a permit for the new one that's coming on. Does that I'm wondering, does that mean that any type of, what do they call it, MFU can go on there without going to the city? The landowner's going to take care of it?
So no, so that's one of those things. It's separated out. The landowner could get a permit saying that the cart's going to be placed here. We make sure traffic flow is going to be the same, parking's there and everything. So whatever cart they're putting on that lot, if it's a cart from Salem, they're coming down for 1 day, 2 days, they don't need a permit. If it's a cart that's in the city for more than 2 days, they could rotate on that property, even if it is 1 day, and they could rotate off. But if they're in the city more than those 2 days, they would need a permit. So yes, carts can continue to rotate through there as needed. The onus for the number of days in the city would then fall on the cart if they're permitted through that section of it.
Okay. And then one last question is, because I know other cities have in the nation have had this. Now this does not, because one of the explanations says that it's anything that can be pulled or pushed down a sidewalk, street, highway, or waterway. So the little kids put a lemonade stand on their wagon. They're not, I mean, they're prohibited in some cities. And I'm thinking, we're not going that far, are we?
So the definition that's provided for mobile food units is
Yeah.
actually just from the state code. So if it's not going to be governed through state, it won't be governed through us.
Okay, so you're gonna be okay with lemonade stands and Girl Scout cookies?
I would hope so.
Oh, no,
Yes,
no, no, because, I mean, some mother or some person got really angry and the little girl had to shut her lemonade stand down. I thought that was just ridiculous. So, all right, but I think this is gonna be very good. At least you'll have more guidelines to follow. So thank you very much.
And then Councilor Novak, it's a commissary that I was talking about. So if they work out of a commissary, those are required grease traps and all of that same regulation that restaurants would need to be governed under.
Okay. Go ahead and continue, Officer Shindell.
Thank you, sir. And Mayor, if there's any other hand raising, since it's not on mine, if you could just call it out, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Well, just so happens Councilor Novak has another.
There you go.
Yeah, well, I made a comment with my sound off, so I thought I just wanted to, when you mentioned the commissary and you said it's the same as a brick and mortar, and I just wanted to verify that what you're saying is the MFUs are at that same standard as well
Yeah,
for
so,
disposal of oils and stuff like that.
so the truck themselves may not have a grease trap, but
Right.
where they're disposing of them have to meet all those requirements. So there's one
Okay.
off of industrial where people go, or commercial, and that has all of those traps and stuff in place to dispose of it properly.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Officer Shindell.
Okay.
Councilor Olson just chimed in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the question of taxes came up. And do the food carts pay a property tax somewhere or another?
I mean, just like other, like the mall, you know, the mall owners pay the property tax and everyone else pays their rent. That's what these carts fall under. You know, they're paying rent to the property owner, and therefore the property owner pays those taxes.
So do they pay a tax based on the length of time that the cart is on the property, or how is that assessed? Doesn't seem to me that the cart owner would be paying taxes that benefit the city of Albany much, other than their permit
Well,
fee.
again, places such as, I mean, the check cashing place on 9th and Pacific, Arby's, they don't own that lot. They don't pay property taxes. The landowner pays that. So
Yeah.
I don't think I think that issue gets out of the wash. The rent, the property owners are always going to pay the property tax.
So does the property owner's tax go up if there's a food cart on the lot for part of the year? I doubt that it does.
I couldn't say it does. I highly doubt it, but that would be a
Yeah,
county issue.
So I think that's one advantage they have over brick and mortar is they don't pay a property tax unless the lot owner charges them some kind of property tax fee. Thank you.
Is that it, Councilor Olson?
Yes,
Thank you. Councilor Johnson?
unless there's a more answer to it.
In relation to the taxes, I checked with the county assessor's office, and the FMUs do pay personal property taxes, which is on the equipment that it takes to run the business. And so that definitely, you know, if they're high enough in value, then they pay the personal property taxes, and then the city, it does benefit from that. Plus the property owner, you know, we get some of that too. So I checked out the last time because I was curious to make sure that they were, you know, that was a fair playing field. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Councilor
Yeah,
Johnson?
we're not necessarily floating in too much property tax, so I was curious. Thank you.
Thank you very much, councilors. Officer Shindell, go ahead and continue, please. What?
Thank you.
5, 6, 10, or?
Thank you, Mayor. So we're at 56110 subsection 8 is what I'm looking at. Just wanted to pull out. So we added the section that each MFU shall be deemed in compliance with the Oregon Fire Code by the Albany Fire Department. Because that was one of the concerns that council brought up in 16 and then at the last meeting. But also moving forward, the state has drafted a code that will require fire suppression systems and the like within food trucks. That hasn't been completely adopted and pushed out to start being adhered to. But in the future, that is going to be very likely to happen. And this will allow our fire department to, without revising the code, to fall into that as well. Just a couple more sections. I had a lot. The next section talks about utilities, generators. More specifically, I had a lot of questions on generators, from noise levels to how it would be allowed. And it got divided into inverter generators and non-inverted generators for the noise distances. And really the 300 feet, when you look at the impact of noise in the actual generator at 300 feet, it's no more than like a humming lawnmower outside. So I felt that to be fair. And that kind of went along with what other cities and states did. And then the 100 feet for anything at the 70 decibel, if they have that, to allow for people to get closer to residential areas and kind of not completely close the doors or make it impossible to achieve what they would like. And then again, just hitting back in the next section, 0.40, the conditions and forms, the property mobile food unit authorization for the property itself, that doesn't expire. That's a one-time thing unless they want to modify it. And then we could look at, they'll just have to go through the process again. But once a property owner obtains that approval, and as long as they aren't changing it, that's a place where food trucks could go as long as they're within code. And it should be specific to the property, and we're not going to allow it to transfer as they sell if property sells. And then for the mobile food unit, which is subsection 2 under that section, those are going to be annual, so 365 days after the issuance. And that's pretty standard across the state. And we're not going to have sorry, go ahead.
Excuse me, Officer Sindel. Somebody needs to mute. I can hear another voice going on.
That might be one of my coworkers in the back. I have 3 other coworkers here. Sorry about that. The last part, sorry. So the renewals, there's some cities. Give me 1 sec.
I've never had to release a warrant. I don't know why I would.
Officer Sindel.
Okay. Sorry, they're gonna leave, so you don't hear that background.
Okay, thank you.
So as far as renewals goes, some of the cities have timelines that you could only renew so many times a year. We had that in our 30-day, where you could only have 1 30-day permit a year. So that's been removed. There's going to be an unlimited amount of times you could renew. So as long as you want to be in this city annually, you'll have to renew your permit.
Excuse me,
go ahead.
Does that cause, do they have to keep their inspections up and fire suppression certifications and everything as well to get renewed?
Yes. So we'll be getting the same documentation annually. They'll have to prove that they're still within compliance with the state and county standards, and that all the requirements are met within the code. Right. And that's also in addition to, so if they are not required to get a permit, a mobile food unit permit, they still have to comply with the code. They still have to have all their state and city licenses. They still have to be disposing of it properly. That doesn't void out the fact that we have standards within the city, because we don't want those kind of games to be played or loopholes to be abused. We want them to still follow our guidelines, but not have to get a permit if they're only going to be here a couple days.
Okay, thank you.
Prohibitations. This is one that we I tried to go over a lot with the Mobile Food Unit Association, or sorry, Oregon Food Truck Association, just because we didn't want it to be, we want to maintain the integrity of the city and what we're looking for as a whole, but also allow the food trucks to thrive. So no temporary structures without a warehouse license. Again, that's something that the county requires and the state requires. So they just have to show that being met. Restrooms, and not being parked in the landscape area, no drive-throughs, all stuff that kind of would start to pull them out of what a mobile food truck is what we're kind of prohibiting. And then to bring back the other thing, so without the grease traps, we also call out the prohibited discharges here to make sure that that's kind of hammered home of what they can and can't do. And then the last two sections just talk about right of entry for inspection, and then denial and revoking or suspending the permits if these things are violated. Ultimately, the goal would be to work with the truck and make them into compliance if they fall out.
Chris?
Yeah.
Councilor Shindell, Councilor Johnson has a question.
Go ahead.
You're muted.
I'm sorry. On the prohibitions, the restroom should not be provided via chemical portable. These food trucks have employees, and I guess, I mean, I know brick and mortars don't have to provide restrooms. You know, some of them do, but some of them don't. But I just wondered, in the cases that you've worked with, what do they do?
So county standard is kind of what we call out here. So the county would require them to have a restroom agreement with a neighboring business. They have a foot size, I think it's 300, within 300 feet, or it might be 500 feet. I believe it's 500 feet of the mobile food unit. So that's how that's satisfied. And they have to turn in that agreement with their packet to make sure that they're meeting those standards.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead, Officer Shindell.
And that's really it. Happy to take your questions, concerns, or anything like that. I think this code's been well looked at, and as long as Leah doesn't mind me saying, she said that this is, you know, a code that she's going to bring to other cities because it is kind of, though not perfect, because each city has its own wants and needs. It's definitely, you know, a jumping point that meets both the city and the mobile food units' livelihood and what they want to do and grow.
Okay, Councilor Bartholomew has a question.
I have a few questions. It seems like the portable toilet is not allowed because of two reasons. It's portable, and that the county has certain requirements on restroom facilities. Is that correct?
So the county would allow for a chemical toilet, but our building department would not. So you're not allowed to have a chemical toilet at a location without a permit, you know, construction, that kind of stuff. So our current code would not allow that.
Counselor?
Okay, and so that doesn't seem, I mean, that it seems to be a little bit of a hardship for some things, for some people, maybe. It sounds like that our city code needs to have some changes, but also I noticed on your penalties, there is no, like, it says immediate revocation of their permit. And that would also have a penalty of being classified as a misdemeanor, which would have a fine attached to it. So I'm just wondering, you said the ultimate goal would be to work with them, but I don't see that as part of this, this regulation here, these codes.
So within every code, there is discretion. It depends on the, I guess, abuse or what is going on. Even outside of this code, all the codes I work in don't allow me to give 20 days, 15 days. They don't say anything of that, but I oftentimes do. Well, most of the time I do. I hardly ever reach the citation model because it's, for me, at least in my experience, it's a lot easier to gain compliance when you work with somebody than just slap them with a citation and wait to go to court. But it depends. So there's discretion within the code everywhere you go. The penalties itself, that is just verbiage we bring into all our codes. But yeah. As far as, sorry, your question before that, about the chemical toilets, we also have to continue to refocus on, these are mobile food trucks. We need to look at them as a mobile thing. Their option to stay stationary is not what they were originally designed for. Oregon is kind of unique in that standard. So we have to decide how much we vary on allowing it to become a permanent versus not. Again, with as Noreen brought up the tables, you know, there is this kind of point where you reach it to be more of a permanent thing, and then you have to follow all these building guidelines, you have to follow these standards and get all these permits. And once you do that, you're going to be in, well, I don't know, it's going to be very expensive to meet those standards. So we are specifically looking at a mobile food unit as what it is, mobile, and allowing them to stay at a location for an extended period of time, but not going to the point where they're becoming a permanent fixture there. It's a hard kind of medium to reach.
Thank you. Councillor Novak was next, and then we'll go back to Councillor Bartholomew.
Thank you kindly. I just want to point out, again, we all appreciate what Officer Schindel has done to provide really good guidelines. And one of the big differences between an MFU and a brick and mortar is, you know, specifically that they're on another property. And if you think about the barn, for instance, there are a bunch of them and they're on a property, and I think there are restrooms there, and I could be wrong. There's another food court elsewhere. I mean, that's part of what distinguishes them. And often entrepreneurs will start out in a food cart and then eventually decide to go brick and mortar. But I just want to say for the record, I do not at all feel compelled to make a chemical toilet an issue, because that's part of what makes them different from a brick and mortar. And I think we all want to make it as easy as we possibly can, as long as good guidelines are in place to encourage this kind of business and to help these folks get off the ground and stay in business. So again, I just wanted to throw that out there for what it's worth. If you go to a food cart, you're often getting it and you're eating and you're leaving. You go to the bathroom at home, usually. I mean, that's all I'm trying to say. I don't think that should be something that a MFU would be compelled to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bartholomew.
Lastly, it says that there are application forms. The MFU has it stated in there that there is an application form, but in the property application that there isn't a specific form that they fill out. So I'm just making that clear, because it can, I want to be as clear as I can be, not be as confusing to
No,
people.
totally. I understand. Thank you so much for pointing that out. I could definitely add that there will be a form for them to fill out as well, just so that they know
Excellent.
what they need to put on paper to get their permit. Or
Excellent. Thank you.
Did you have something else? Thank you, Councillor Bartholomew. Councillor Novak, do you have something else? There you go. Thank you. Any other councillors have any comments? Councillor Kopczynski, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Olson, Councillor Smith. Anything else? Hearing nothing else, we have a resolution. Oh, somebody else have something?
Sorry, I totally didn't go back to the PowerPoint and talk about the fees.
Okay,
Holly, if you could pull that back up. Sorry, I missed that.
Yes.
So within the code, it talks about council resolution to change fees and permits. So what I did is I pulled up, Albany is the 12th largest city in Oregon. So I pulled up all of the cities above us and up to us and kind of delved into what they do and found that it varies immensely depending on where you are. From Springfield at $43.05 because a nickel is important, to Medford, which is $1,200 annually. So given all that and kind of looking at staff time, this isn't a money, generator. This is just how do we cover staff time. We came to the $200 mark. It should take about an hour to process these. And we're allotting about an hour per unit for enforcement or follow-up inspections and that kind of stuff. So just meeting that baseline of what staff hours will be moved into this. And then the $100 for the property itself for that one-time charge. And again, it probably take about an hour to get through that. I don't know if any of you have any questions, but just to, when you get to that resolution, if you had questions, be good.
Council, any questions about the fees? I see a bunch of no's.
Nope.
It looks like we have no comments on the fees. So council, we do have a resolution on page, where's it at?
Oh,
Mayor Johnson, the ordinance and resolution are both on Wednesday's agenda.
Oh, what is it?
Gotcha.
Okay,
okay. And it's an ordinance.
it's
Yes.
an ordinance, right? Okay, so it looks like we're gonna be seeing this again on, are you gonna bring this back to us on Wednesday?
I'll bring this back to you on Wednesday. I will edit the land use application to show that they need to complete them, the MFU authorization forms, application form. And then I don't recall any other changes, but that's how I'll revise that to reflect your concerns.
Mhm.
Thanks so much, Officer Shindell. Council, appreciate your time this evening. Okay, next on the agenda would be Stormwater Master Plan with Rob Emmons.
Sorry.
pages 7 through 16.
I'm sorry, Mayor. Leah Tucker with Oregon Mobile Food Units Association. She said she could speak on the chemical toilets if you'd like, and kind of state standards, DEQ stuff.
Council, would you like to hear from Leah?
Yes, I would.
There you go. So Leah, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. So the chemical toilet and the restroom agreements that are put into place through the county and through the state, those requirements, we actually worked pretty hard through 2019 to make those guidelines for mobile food units statewide. And the chemical toilets was actually one of the things that came up pretty frequently. It used to be that it was like a quarter mile and a 5-minute walk were the previous requirements. And we discovered that that wasn't necessary. And for health concerns, it adds a little bit too much space for those who work inside of the mobile food unit. So when we're discussing about chemical toilets and mobile food units and the distance of that 500 feet, as a state, we kind of figured out that that really wasn't as big of a concern as we originally thought it was going to be. And that was after doing a tour and going to all the cities and talking to a lot of mobile food units. I don't think people really realized how close they were to bathrooms. So the portable toilets became kind of a non-issue when it came to the actual unit owners and operators. When it came to actual customers, there is a state requirement that states that if you have tables provided for your customers, you have to have a bathroom within that same 500 feet for your customers. It does not speak to the portable unit as far as bathrooms, because DEQ got involved into the middle of all of that and decided that technically they didn't want them out there at all. That wasn't their intent. They weren't intended to be kind of a permanent placement for long-term use. Their intent is for short-term use for things like construction and events. So as far as the state was concerned on the environmental side of things, their intent was not for them to be placed as a permanent fixture or semi-permanent fixture for mobile food units. So they kind of ixnayed us on that one anyway. So Albany is not out of bounds with their building code and their site codes in saying that they don't want portable toilets. It's kind of if DEQ gets around to writing their piece of their code and fire gets around to writing their piece of their code, it's probably going to be kind of, slashed off of all of the availability. As it is right now, we can there's a loophole, and the state kind of says, can't get it within 5 feet, you can use the portable toilet, but, and there's, water, hand washing facility type requirements that come along with that. So there's a lot of things that come with a portable toilet that most carts aren't going to want to get involved in if it's a singular cart and not in a pod anyway. So it's one of those things where, yeah, it's a concern for some carts, but it came down to, well, we're mobile. So if you can't get within 500 feet of a bathroom, maybe we should really rethink of where we're considering vending. So there was a lot of discussion, and it was something that the state tried to address as well. But when it came down to it, that wasn't their intent anyway. So the state kind of went, nah, let's stay away from it.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate the history and the education.
Absolutely.
I'm sure you'll be available for us when we do have questions.
Anytime. You guys can reach out to me anytime you want.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I think Councilor Johnson has a question for you.
Well, I was just gonna ask, are any of these food carts self-contained, like a camper, motorhome type thing that you know?
I think I've run across one that actually had a they purchased a unit that was from out of state, that was built for events and was self-contained, but they didn't actually have an operational bath. Like, they used it for storage because it wasn't actually something, the state of Oregon, where we tend to vend, it's not, we don't see those types of situations where we need that. Most of those types of units, you're going to see those are going to be like your big event type trailers that are going to be traveling pretty heavily throughout the country, not just within the state. So the state, we just don't see that. It's like I said, that the only time I've ever actually seen a unit that had a bathroom on it, they didn't actually use the bathroom. It was for storage. So
yeah, to me, that'd be an answer to a lot of the a lot of the problems. But
yeah,
if they don't.
The hard part with that is that then you get out of the gray water situation, and now you're into black water, and that's a little bit harder to regulate and hard to manage whenever you're dealing with such a tiny space and food service. There's a lot more regulation around black water and food service than there is around gray water and food service. So it's it's kind of an area that most of us don't want to get into.
So you just want to travel in them. You don't want to sell food from them. All right. Thank you.
Very much.
As a potential customer, that would turn me off.
Right.
So Bessie, Councilor Johnson, your hand is still up. So thank you very much, Leah, for attending tonight. Thank you, Officer Shindell. I'd like to move the agenda along to Stormwater Master Plan with Rod Emmons at page 11 through 16. Complete document is here. And so you had a chance to take a look at that. So Rob Emmons, can you please join us this evening?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We are going to share our screen. We have a PowerPoint for you this afternoon to help communicate the Stormwater Master Plan. So we are bringing that up now. Should be up in just a second. Can you see the screen?
Not yet.
Did you share screen? Oh, whoops, no. Yeah. All right. About that. All right. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. Perfect. Okay. So, thank you, Mayor Johnson. It's been a long time since the city has updated its Stormwater Master Plan. So we are excited this afternoon, almost evening, to present you this Stormwater Master Plan. Before we get too far, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Rob Emmons, and with me today is Ryan Beath. One of our primary jobs here at the city is to develop and maintain the city's stormwater master plan. I'm going to click through the slides here.
You should just click right on the screen. Scroll. Oh, nope. There you go.
Okay. So we each are going to present part of the master plan today. Since this is a remote work session and we are sharing our screen, we're not going to be able to see you if you raise your hand. And so it makes an interactive presentation much more difficult. Therefore, we saved plenty of time at the end for questions. So what we want to accomplish today is go over a bit why we need a new stormwater master plan. Go over a summary of the stormwater master plan, and then finally discuss the steps that come next. So to better understand why we developed a new stormwater master plan, it helps to understand a bit of the background information of the stormwater system. The stormwater system comprises approximately 140 miles of pipe, 70 miles of ditches, 2,500 manholes, 4,400 catch basins, and approximately 330 stormwater quality facilities. So historically, it's been challenging to fund stormwater improvements and provide needed maintenance. This is getting better with the development of the stormwater utility. However, Albany still has a long way to go to develop adequate funding for stormwater needs. So just part of what this stormwater master plan will do is will allow for future discussions of stormwater funding. So, and last but not least, is the current stormwater master plan was completed in 1988. That's 33 years ago, and it no longer represents current conditions in Albany. So to put this in perspective, we put together a few slides about 1988. So in 1988, Ronald Reagan was president. Population of Albany was 28,000, which we are almost double that today. The average price of a new home was $76,000, just a bit over $76,000. That would be nice. The favorite movie in 1988 was Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And two of our favorite people from 1988. Director Bailey, that's I think that is from 1988 or close to it. And Director Blaine.
Oh my God.
And we'd be remiss if we didn't point out Jeff. He's been I know he's over in community development right now, but he's been involved in this stormwater master plan from the very beginning. So so we had to give a shout out to him. So, but on a serious note, so what is a master plan and how is it used? So basically a master plan is just a collection of technical information and policy goals put together to evaluate the city, in this case, the city's stormwater system, and to identify needed improvements. The primary focus of this master plan is on the conveyance capacity of the existing and future stormwater system. It does not address other aspects of the system, such as water quality or operations and maintenance. So how is it used? So this master plan will ultimately become a part of the comprehensive plan, part of the comp plan, and that's through a separate action from the Planning Commission and Council. It's also used to identify improvements in determining what a possible stormwater SDC fee would be. And just as importantly, it also prioritizes and guides the improvements that we need to make to the stormwater system. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Mr. Beast.
Thanks, Rob. So, development of the supporting information for this master plan is a result of a long-term effort overlapping with other activities, such as the implementation of the city's 2017 stormwater utility fee. The city has worked closely with the engineering firm Cardno for many years in the development of the reports listed here. The titles are somewhat self-explanatory. Topics range from regulatory research, measuring and monitoring stream and pipe flows, land use, design storm evaluations, and computer modeling. The report itself is organized into 9 chapters, as shown here. Chapter 1 provides a brief summary, touching again on the time passed since the last master plan effort took place. Chapter 2 provides some background on the city, the stormwater system, and the past efforts contributing to this final master plan. Chapter 3 is focused on general policy and regulatory issues affecting the master plan. Brief summaries are provided on related federal law, state land use, planning goals, Oregon administrative rules and statutes, and other City of Albany specific documents such as the strategic plan and the comprehensive plan. Chapter 4 summarizes the factors involved in determining runoff from the city. This chapter provides a basic review of hydrology with specific components such as basin characteristics and rainfall discussed in more detail. A summary of the computer modeling that went into determining deficiencies and the associated improvements is provided in Chapter 5. Much more detail on this is provided in the appendix, in the reports in the appendix. Chapter 6 discusses how individual components of the system are evaluated for different design storm events. The design storms assigned to pipes and other components is simply a function of the desired level of service and accepted risk of failure of that component. So in general, infrastructure that serves larger areas is typically sized to meet larger, less frequent design storms due to the significant impact of a potential failure. The final product of all this work begins to appear in Chapter 7 and 8. Chapter 7 summarizes existing system deficiencies, and Chapter 8 summarizes the build-out deficiencies. Appendix A provides more data on the deficiencies, and again, more details provided in the original reports in the appendix. Chapter 9 includes the final CIPs. These projects address both existing and future build-out deficiencies. Final projects were also the least cost alternative solutions. Prioritization categories of high and low are also assigned to projects. High priority projects fix actual flooding, while low priority projects address technical deficiencies, such as freeboard violations and other less hazardous conditions. The master plan's role in the development of potential SDCs is summarized here as well. Projects are presented on a basin-by-basin approach with a selection of maps, tables, and figures included in Appendix D. So the next few slides provide some images intended to visualize key components of the evaluation and the results. This starts with an aerial of the city with the main water bodies highlighted in blue. The determination of deficiencies and development of CIPs is focused within the city's current UGB. Within the UGB, and as you've heard before, the city has a lot of existing stormwater infrastructure, from pipes and channels to manholes, catch basins, and water quality facilities. In general, the city's stormwater infrastructure eventually drains to local waterways within the UGB. These include the Willamette River, Calapooya River, Oak Creek, Periwinkle Creek, Cox Creek, Burkhart Creek, and Truax Creek. So let's see. So 6 major drainage basins make up the areas flowing to the local waterways. The smallest of them being the Willamette Drainage Basin, followed in increasing size by the Cox Creek Basin, Burkhart-Truax Basin, Periwinkle Basin, North Albany Basin, and the largest basin being Oak Creek. So a basin's ability to infiltrate has a significant effect on stormwater runoff. In general, paved and other impervious surfaces result in the greatest amount of stormwater runoff. These pie charts compare impervious area to pervious area for both the existing and build-out conditions. The dark shade represents the fraction of impervious basin area, such as rooftops, roads, and parking lots. The green fraction represents areas with at least some ability to provide infiltration. These predicted increases in impervious surface combined with the extent of existing deficiencies illustrates the need to prepare for future increases in stormwater runoff. So the next few slides show the location of deficiencies and the recommended CIPs. Starting in North Albany, the existing system main lines are shown in green. The green existing system lines are now overlaid by red lines indicating a deficiency identified in the master plan. A breakout of the sizes and combined lengths of the deficiencies is shown as well. In some cases, these deficiencies are also open channel ditches or areas with no infrastructure that have no known problems, or that have known problems. So now the CIPs are dropped in. Orange indicates a high priority project, and blue indicates a low priority project. The remaining red lines that you can see little bits of were deficient, but after the downstream improvements were made, those pipes began to function properly, so they're not deficient anymore. On the south side of the river, red lines again indicate a deficiency, and again a breakdown of diameters and total length as shown. And again, the CIPs are dropped in, and the extent of the needed improvements is highlighted. Notable here are the projects associated with roads that do not yet exist, but that are included in the transportation system plan. These TSP-related projects are categorized as low and will obviously not be built until other development occurs. So now that we have a big picture, we can take a look at a specific basin. We are using Cox Creek Basin here as an example. Here is the Cox Creek Basin build-out CIP figure from the master plan. This is the same concept as what the last few slides went over. The same information is presented like this for each basin. Also included for each basin are these graphs intended to help better visualize project costs and the benefit of improvement from a flooding standpoint. The green line is the cost of the project, and the volume of flooding eliminated by making the improvement is shown in the orange and gray columns. Again, only the high priority projects will have actual surface flooding volumes shown here. So in closing with the visuals here, a summary of CIP project information per basin is as follows. The Willamette Basin has 20 proposed projects with total project costs in the basin as shown, and a breakout of high and low priority projects given there as well. The Cox Creek Basin, 12 proposed projects with total project costs and priority cost breakouts as shown. The Burkhart-Truax Basin has 9 proposed projects with costs as shown. The Periwinkle Basin has 29 proposed projects with costs as shown. North Albany Basin has 18 proposed projects. And Oak Creek has 13 proposed projects with the costs as shown there. So citywide project costs total about $145 million. Roughly 40% of these projects are categorized as high priority projects, with the remaining categorized as low.
Okay, so that was a whirlwind summary of the Stormwater Master Plan. And, we could spend hours on the details, but I think what's important is just to get the highlights of the plan, knowing that we are focused on conveyance of existing and future improvements. And the projects are called out per basin, and they're categorized as high and low projects. And we are going to pause after this for questions, but before we do that, just want to highlight quickly what the next steps are in the process. So today, presented an overview of the master plan. You've got a link to the larger document that you can take a look at. So what we plan to do is to address council concerns and comments in this draft plan, and then bring this back to council via a public hearing where you can consider adoption. And the earliest that could happen would be the end of June. Once it's adopted by council, then it goes to a separate planning commission action where they will recommend incorporating the document by reference into the comprehensive plan. And then that will go back to council after that for to council to formally adopt that proposal, that process. So that is what we had today for a formal presentation. We would be more than happy to answer any questions. And we're gonna stop sharing so we can see each other.
Council, did you have any questions for Rob? Councilor Novak?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get things straight in my head again. So in 2017, we implemented the stormwater fee, correct?
Correct, yes.
And that's what people see on their utility bills, a stormwater fee. And then
Correct.
you're talking about SDCs, and this is for projects that you listed out as high and low priority in each different area. And it's capital improvements. So am I understanding correctly that, like, if someone's building a home, whether it's a private homeowner, or if someone's building a group of homes, a housing, whatever we call it, or a business of some sort, that so you're asking them to pay an SDC for the stormwater to make those improvements in those areas?
Correct. And SDC fees, that's not part of this master plan today. That would be a separate work effort and separate council action into the future. But yeah, correct. The SDC fees would help fund some of these capital projects only in part, only the extra capacity needs of these projects or extra capacity cost of these projects.
Okay, and at the same time, are you or is anyone saying that we're going to increase the stormwater fee that's already on people's bills since 2017? Is that being considered as part of making the needed?
Yeah, that's a good question. That will be a discussion moving forward. Right now, the stormwater fee is not really collecting significant revenue to make these improvements. So now that the first step is the master plan the draft is done, the needs have been identified, and those from that list of projects, those can be moved over into the capital improvement project list. And then they can be considered to be funded moving forward. But you're right in that the separate discussion will need to happen as far as the storm drainage utility fee, if that is to be increased, and by how much to help fund the cost of these projects.
Thank you. Final question for the moment is, this is kind of infrastructure, is it not? The fixing stormwater, fixing pipes and things. I'm just wondering if this would be something that would be under consideration with the money that the city is receiving from the federal government.
The stormwater facility definitely is city infrastructure for sure. Whether it's available to be funded from the cost, from the money that we're receiving from the government, that's a separate discussion that's happening. And to my knowledge, I don't know if those projects are moving along that pipeline or not. I don't think they are, because this is still a draft plan.
Mayor, could I respond also to that?
Okay, so Peter, 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 go ahead, go default to her.
Mayor, I would just ask Director Bailey to address.
Director Bailey, go ahead, please.
Thank you. And Councilor Novak, an interesting thing that you bring up is this is infrastructure, and it would be eligible for some of these sources of funding that are being discussed from the federal government. And one of the ways that you get a project funded when there's new sources of funding available is to have it listed in your master plan. Because one of the criteria for funding these projects is it has to be eligible under the traditional federal loan programs. And those loan programs require that you have a facility plan or a master plan developed that identifies these projects. So the master plan is not specifically about funding. It's about just defining your needs and what you need. And of course, there's costs associated with those needs because this stuff is expensive. But it does tie into both operational funding needs and capital funding needs. And these new funding sources could be used for this once we have a new master plan adopted.
Director Bailey, I always appreciate your explanations. They always help me get things a little bit straighter in my head. Thank you very much.
Sure, it's a good tie-in, because a lot of small towns, just as an aside, a lot of small towns that don't have the funding to do this type of master planning cannot effectively compete for these types of federal grants and loans.
Thank you, Councilor Novak. Thank you, Director Bailey. Go ahead and put your hand down, Councilor Novak. Does any of the councilors have any comments or questions for Director Bailey or for Rob Inman? Councilor Olson, please. You're muted, sir.
Thank you. And I'd like to remind staff that 10% of us males are red-green blind, and red lines on a green or gray background don't show up hardly at all. So if you can avoid red against gray and green, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. I'm red-green blind.
Thank you, Councilor. We appreciate if you keep that in mind when you create presentations. Okay, so I don't see any other comments or hands up. Peter, do you want to add something, City Manager?
No, I would just, before Director Bailey raised her hand, was going to address the projects that are now being considered by folks. And yes, stormwater projects can be considered, and the council will have a chance to take a look at those projects after this group of community folks has also taken a look. But certainly stormwater projects are eligible.
Thank you so much, Peter. So next up is you. City Services Fee Update. Peter Trotzen with a verbal update for us.
I think Rob had the next item, did he not?
Oh, I'm sorry. Rob, yes, 17 and 19, Public Works inflationary increase. Sorry about that, Rob.
No, that's okay. So thank you, Mayor. We are going to be sharing the screen in just a second, but so this afternoon we're going to be considering if council would like to move forward with adjusting public works fees. This is something that we do every year and we come before council, and whether you should consider adjusting fees for inflation or other needs, such as this year we are not only considering inflation, but for our water and our wastewater, SDCs, we are also considering whether we should take the next phase or step increase. I explained what that is in the council memo, and I'll address that here in just a few minutes as I move on the presentation. So there's a couple things to consider: inflation and whether we should take the next step or phase increase in water and wastewater. Also, before I get too far, I want to make sure that this discussion tonight is just on public works fees. It's not a discussion about SDCs and how House Bill 2001 may affect SDCs. That's a discussion that we're going to be having into the future, hopefully by the end of June. We'll get that on the council agenda. But I just want to make sure that those two items weren't confused. So this is just about public works fees and inflationary adjustments. So with that, public, I'm going to share the screen here so we're all looking at the same windows. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yep, perfect. So for public works fees, there's 8 separate fees in public works. There's water, wastewater, and transportation SDCs. And then there are connection charges or connection fees for water, wastewater, streets, storm drainage, and post-construction stormwater quality. So you can see, first let's talk about SDCs. So you can see on the screen that the table that's up before you, the same table is in your packet as well. It may look a little different, but it has the same information. So you can see the current fee for water, wastewater, and transportation is there toward the middle. So tonight we need to consider whether we are going to do the inflationary adjustment, as that's shown in the middle. And the inflationary adjustment as a percentage is 6.62% this year. That's a large inflationary increase. And the index that we use the Engineering News-Record Construction Cost Index for the city of Seattle. And that captures the change in construction cost on a yearly basis for the Northwest. So that is shown in the middle column. We also need to consider whether we're going to do the phased adjustment. So we talk a second about what the phased adjustment is. So 3 years ago, back in 2019, water and wastewater SDC charges were updated, which resulted in a new maximum allowable fees. At that time, council decided to phase in these fees in 5 equal steps, ideally each year for 5 years. The first phase-in step occurred in 2019. In 2020, council elected not to take a phase-in step. And this year, although it's the 3rd year to consider a phase-in, it would be the 2nd phase-in step if that's what council decides to do. So those charges are shown on the very right-hand side. It's inflationary adjustment plus the 2nd phase-in step. So the next table that's in the memo is the SDC community comparison. And this is a little unique. I think we shared this last year as well, but we just took surrounding communities, totaled their SDC charges, and the total charge for Albany, it also includes Parks SDCs. I know Parks isn't part of Public Works, but to be equitable, we included all the SDC charges. And then we compare those charges to the median cost of a home for those communities. And then we take the percentage of SDC to the cost of the home, and that's on the very right-hand column. So you can see Albany is about 4%, a little under 4% now. Considering just the inflationary adjustment, we're a little over 4. If we do the inflationary plus the phased adjustment, we're about 4.2%. That's just something to keep in mind to kind of help put things into perspective. And the last group of fees to consider, these are the utility connection fees. And these also have the same percentage, the 6.62% index applied as the SDCs. And you can see the fees, these are smaller charges, so the fees aren't increased dramatically, but they are shown there as well. So the big questions for council are, do we want to move forward with an inflationary adjustment and also the phased adjustment? One, kind of up for discussion. But important point, I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't point this out, is that I think it's an important step to consider to always keep pace with inflation, and we won't be going backward in trying to fund some of the public improvements that are needed. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and shut that, and hopefully you can see me again.
So Rob, Councilor Kopczynski has questions or at least a comment.
Yes,
Okay.
Rob, I'm just wondering how you came up with a 6+% inflation rate. The last I checked, it was less than 2, it was like around 1.7 or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good question. SDCs focus mostly on, or all on, construction. So we need to track the inflation of construction materials and labor for construction. And so part of what the SDC statutes recommend or require is that we use the published index that tracks those things. I got something on my screen here. Okay. So so we historically have always used the Engineering News Record construction cost index based out of Seattle. And so from April of 2020 to April of 2021, that section of society, or that that industry, has kind of bears out those numbers. So
Thank you. I was just wondering if it was going to be tied to DANR. So thanks.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob. And Councilor, I think I saw Councilor Johnson raise her hand and put it down. Did you have something? Okay. Then Councilor Novak, and then Councilor
Yeah.
and then Councilor Smith after that. Councilor Novak?
Oh, thank you. I thought you said Councilor Johnson first. I am having trouble, sir, understanding all your words. Forgive me. This is, I never knew how much I depended on lip reading until people started covering their lips. Is there any way you could take a move further away from the other gentleman if you must, and uncover your mouth so I can understand your words and see your lips move?
Sure.
Please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
See. Yeah, so can I go over the those fees again, or what can I, how can I help you understand? What can I go over for you?
I just know there was something that was muffled that I didn't catch, and I can't remember what it was, quite honestly, because I couldn't interrupt to say, I don't know what you're saying. So.
Okay. So I can go over the proposed fees again, if that.
Well, I was. Yeah, I heard the 6.62% increase loud and clear. And
Okay.
I know we're talking about SDCs, and I know that you talked about when the cost of construction goes up, and the cost of, the whole, everything having to do with construction, the materials and all that plays into this. And forgive me, like I said, I cannot remember specifically what I missed. All I know is I missed something that I wish I would have caught.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so I can kind of recap that discussion quickly. As the Councilor Kapinski asked, like why inflation was 6.62%. It seems to be lower than that. And point I was trying to make is that we use the Engineering News Record Construction Cost Index for the city of Seattle, and that covers the Northwest area, Northwest region.
what Seattle is much bigger than Albany. Forgive me for interrupting, Sarah. Would you not choose something of a comparable size?
There's not a published index that covers small communities. The ENR covers the large cities. Seattle, on the West Coast, it's Seattle and Los Angeles. And then I don't know the cities off the top of my head, but then I think it goes back down to the Midwest and then to the East. So there's 20 cities across the U.S. that they published in an index for, and you go towards the nearest city that's closest, and for us it's Seattle. And we did quite a bit of research on this a few years ago, because similarly other councils have had the same question, and rightly so. Seattle's economy is different than Albany's, but one thing to keep in mind is that what the index covers is the change in cost. So even though materials can cost a little bit less in Oregon and rural Oregon, that change in cost is similar throughout the Northwest. So if a 2x4 is $10 here, and in Seattle it's $12 or whatever, that the area tends to see the same percentage increase, percentage growth.
So Councilor Novak, if I can, it's the Seattle index because it's, the biggest city in the region, but it's really, as Rob was just saying, the percent change in costs of construction projects from last year, from April of 2020 to what they cost this year. And we all know that a lot of things have happened to make construction more expensive. And the reason we use that for SDCs is because SDCs fund construction. They fund capital projects. So we're not trying to index it to standard inflation where we're talking about wages and groceries and those sorts of things. We're talking about construction costs. So the ENR and the standard inflation index often are not, exactly lined up.
Thank you.
Sure.
Again.
That answer your question, Councilor?
It helped. Thank you so much.
Thank you. What does ENR mean, Chris, Director Bailey?
Engineering News Record. It's a national publication about engineering stuff.
Okay. Let's clear that for everyone. So Councilor Smith, you had a question or a comment?
Yes, I did. I just wanted to say how useful it is to have the chart showing the percentage of housing costs, cost of a median house compared to the SDCs, or how that may play. Oh, I'm stumbling here, but how that may play into the cost of a house. It's far less dramatic than I think our standard imaginations might lead us to believe.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So council, is there anything else, council, for any more questions? Councilor Smith, are you still there? You want more questions? No, okay. So let's go. So staff, what do you need from us today?
So I would like to bring this back to the next city council meeting on June 9th. There are a number of resolutions that need to be completed. So basically, I need direction on whether to pursue the inflationary adjustment, and should we consider or increase the water and wastewater fees for the second phased adjustment.
Go ahead, Council, just a minute. Go ahead, Councilor Olson.
Yes, I'd like to ask, does your department take any money from the general fund?
Public Works does not take any general fund money.
Okay, I was going to say if it does, we need to raise the fees so that you wouldn't have to, but I guess you don't. And it's interesting that our fees are considerably less than some of the other cities in the area, all except Sweet Home. And do you have any ideas as to why Sweet Home can get by on such a low total SDC charge?
Yes, Sweet Home, of all the 5 systems, water, sewer, storm, parks, and transportation, Sweet Home, I think, only has 3. They do not have a stormwater SDC. And there's one other one, and I forget what that is off the top of my head. So they're not charging across all systems. And they, you know, I would guess, I don't work for Sweet Home, so I don't know the answer exactly, but I would guess that they have not updated their master plans recently, which then would result in new projects, which could then result in higher SDC charges. So I think that's just a decision that their council has made not to pursue those.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Olson. Councilor Johnson, have a comment or question?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Rob, does this increase, does it include the the year that we passed, that we didn't do last year when we didn't do the raise because of what was going on? So is this inclusive of the 20 and the 21?
No. Oh, good question. No, it would just be the second phased increase. So
Okay.
we're not going back and doing 20 and doing 21. It's just the second phase, second step.
Great, that helps. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Anyone else? Councilor Kupczynski, Councilor Olson, Councilor Bartholomew?
So do you want us to comment on whether we like to see the increase or not?
That's what I'm asking you.
Sure. Yes.
I think we
Bring
should
back-
give it the
bring
increase.
Back on June 9th?
Yep.
Yes, so Mayor and Council, we need direction on, do you want to apply the ENR 6.62% increase to STCs and the other table of connection charges? And regarding SDCs, do you also want to apply the second step that was skipped for the water and sewer SDCs as well or not? And that will help Rob write the resolutions that we would like to bring back to you in a couple weeks.
Okay, thank you, Director Bailey, for that clarification. Councilor Johnson and Councilor Novak.
I would think that, you know, since we skipped it last year, we have to keep on with the process that we actually went for by stair stepping it, you know, so that we don't do it all at once. So I think we need to do it.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Novak?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there is any way at all to delay it, just because I am aware of so many people who have been so hard hit by the events of the last 14 months, and we're still not open in Oregon. We're still not fully open, and I'm just aware of an awful lot of people who, having a fee increase even a little bit, it's very difficult on them. I know there are people here who it's no big deal, but I'm speaking out for those to whom it is. So all I'm asking is there any way to just give it a couple months before we, you know, bump things up? And is there any way at all to just give a little bit of a cushion of grace? I understand we didn't do it in 2020. Heard you loud and clear, saw the lips. I'm just wondering, as I say, I'm speaking out on behalf of individuals who for whom an increase in fees is a hardship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Novak. Councilor Johnson and Councilor Smith.
Yep. Now, to make it clear for myself and maybe for others, these are SDC charges and connection charges. They're not going on the utility bills as a separate charge. Do I have
Okay,
that right?
I thought we were including a resolution for the forgive me, because there's a lot on this table today, but I thought we were including the stormwater increase.
That was already discussed.
Okay, sorry.
So this, yeah, so this is
Stressful
basically,
week.
this is basically for
Yes.
system development charges. And so
Mhm.
unless you're adding onto your home and doing things privately, most of it's going to, I think it's going to affect new construction. I think that's right, but I'm not sure. Thanks.
Correct. If there's a building permit and there's a lot of nuances to when they're charged, but you're correct that they're applied to new development. That's kind of a simple answer.
Okay.
They're not paid automatically on your utility bill.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Smith.
I had two questions that relate directly to other people's questions. Should these fees be adopted and increased, when would the increase take effect? Councilor Novak is concerned about giving people a few extra months, and I think the effective date would be some time from now. Same with when does the next stormwater utility fee increase go into effect? We adopted that earlier in the year.
Correct. So the resolutions for the SDCs and the connection charges, if passed at the June 9th council meeting, would take effect July 1st of this year. And you caught me off guard on the stormwater utility increase.
I can talk
think
about that part, Rob.
Okay.
I'll take that part.
Okay.
So I gave the presentation to the council on the 3 water utility rates. Some not too long ago, I don't remember. And that will also be at a public hearing on the 9th for adoption. And those do go in effect, at different times. So if the council passes those increases, there was a inflationary increase for wastewater, which would be effective July 1st, and an inflationary increase for water, which would be effective January 1st. And then the 17%, which sounds like a big number, but is not a huge dollar amount, increase for stormwater, which would be next March 1st. So these are the utility rates, monthly charges for fiscal year 21-22. And that is also going to be at the June 9th council meeting in a public hearing.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, Director. So Council, what direction would you like to give to Director Bailey and Rob Edmonds? Would you like to see it again on June 9th? I got 2 thumbs up. I got a nod. I got a nod here. Councilor Novak. Your hand is still up. I assume that you were done.
Oh,
My apologies.
it's the hand on the screen.
Yeah.
All right, so that looks like, Councilor Bartholomew, what are you thinking? Bring it back? So it sounds like we'd like you to have it bring it back with what you proposed on June 9th.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank
time, Director and Rob, appreciate it. So next up is City Manager Peter Schrotzen for the city utilities fee update, a verbal presentation. And Peter.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. We've, as you know, we've been working hard to build this vehicle. I use the analogy that the city services fee would be a vehicle that you could put in your garage and drive it when you need it. At your last work session on May 12th, you provided direction to staff to finish the construction of the city services fee using a base residential rate of $9. The city team, and I got to give a lot of credit to Sean Park here for leading that team, immediately began working on the final pieces to ready the various parts for implementation of the fee. As construction of the rate continued over the past week, special cases were discovered. And these include mixed class accounts, such as a commercial building that shares a water meter with multifamily apartment units. And due to these complexities, it's prudent to delay the crafting of this fee ordinance and resolution for council's consideration. A 2-week delay is allowing staff time to work through these complexities and verify that the fee is applied accurately across the customer classes. Accuracy is not only important for application of the city service fee, but also it'll help us to ensure that the correct criteria are being used to identify low-income accounts and make certain that eligible accounts are aware of the low-income program. City staff have been in contact with Community Services Consortium, or CSC, of Lynn County in order to identify efficiencies to decrease the administrative costs of the fee while widening the eligibility to utility customers. And one option being considered is adoption of the same eligibility guidelines that are used by the state low-income energy assistance program. That program uses 60% of Oregon median income versus the current Albany low-income program, which uses 70% of Lynn County median income. Internal discussion is underway. We're talking about the administrative costs associated with the implementation, maintenance, and operational costs of the fee. And the utility billing department incurs costs for personnel, systems, and services in order to provide utility billing services for the current 3 utilities, water, sewer, and stormwater. And the city services fee would add a 4th utility. And the model that we're currently looking at is based on revenue, the revenue that's generated by each utility. And if such a model were adopted, the city services fee would incur about $180,000 in annual administrative costs. That's quite different from what you heard last time. We talked about $250 to $300. So those are the reasons for taking that off the agenda for this week. And we've rescheduled the agenda item for the week of the 7th. So you'll hear it at the 7th, the work session on the 7th, and the council meeting on the 9th. And are there any questions I can answer for you at this point?
Nope, I have nothing.
Okay. Thank you.
Council, you guys have anything for Peter? Everybody's shaking their heads
Yes.
no. Oh,
Yeah,
Councilwoman.
I always have questions.
It's okay.
So you had mentioned the words crafting of the ordinance to make sure that it's whatever across customer classes. And I seem to recall from the last discussion that Councilor Bartholomew and I were concerned again about people. I was concerned specifically about people who may not have been in low income situation until the events of the last 14 months. And we asked if we could wait a few months and update how many households we had, because we had a discussion. There was somewhere between 100 to 250 households currently in that classification. But I submitted to everyone that I believe that number may be a good deal higher because of the events of these past 14 months, which are still going on. And we were told that we couldn't delay that. So I'm wondering, because you use the words to craft the ordinance so that it is equitable and across the customer classes, and I'm submitting to you that I believe we have more people in a lower income grouping than the 100 to 250 households that you're aware of at this time. So my question is, is there some way that we are looking at the people who are newly in this category because of the events of the last 14, because of all the COVID stuff and how that's impacted a lot of folks? I'm just wondering if our city manager can help me with that, because I thought he said we can't do that. We have to do it right away. But how is that crafting it according to the customer classes and taking into account the fact that we have potentially way more people in the low income ranking than what was previously known?
Councilor Novak, Sean Park has some comments or feedback for us.
Well, Mayor, can I just really quickly, I do want to turn to Sean because he has all the details, but I wanted to address something Councilor Novak said. I did not say that we can't wait. In fact, I remember that conversation and remember saying that you certainly can wait. You can decide to wait if you want. The problem is that you're going to have to, at that point, make the adjustments in our city workforce that will happen if we don't have the resources with which to keep those service levels at the rate that you want to keep them at. So you can certainly wait. We have worked hard. Sean has worked hard to make this happen before July 1st, so that if the council wants to have it available to avoid those service level cuts, you would have it available. But if that's not the intent, if that's not the desire, that's certainly something that is within your your purview. And as far as the 150 to the 200 are concerned, those are just households that are on the program now for water. And we're looking at expanding the program quite a bit to address people who are not just senior and disabled, but also all people at the either the 60 or the 70% rate of adjusted median income. So I would ask Sean to go ahead and say what he was going to say at this point. Thanks, Mayor.
You're welcome. Go ahead, Sean.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Mayor. To your question, Councilor Novak, we're looking at a phased approach for the low income, and time is the constraint, as Peter just explained. So we're looking at two phases. The initial phase is to bring in all of the current low income eligible customers that we have within the water utility, which is anywhere between 150 to 220, depending on the time of year, directly into low income program for the city services fee, which is a lower number than we would expect based on what has happened across the pandemic. What we're looking to do is adopt some semblance of the same eligibility requirements used by the state of Oregon for their low income energy assistance program, which uses a different set of criteria and widens the eligibility for City of Albany customers too. The issue is the amount of time. If we were to implement by July 1, we don't have the time to sign those people up and get them in the program in a fashion that would allow us to meet the July 1 deadline. As mentioned earlier, we're in communication with CSE to determine how we can get those eligible people into a low-income program for the city services fee as soon as we possibly can, but it just simply can't happen by July 1. So that would be the phase 2 part, is widening the eligibility to consider using the LIHEAP, which is the acronym for the Low-Income Energy Assistance Program at the state level, to bring folks into a new low-income program for not only city services fee, but at that point in the phase 2 element, we're looking to broaden the low-income assistance across all utilities in one action, so to speak. So one of those takes much less time than the other. I hope that clears up a little bit for you, our goal and direction.
Thank you, Sean. Councilor Johnson first, and Councilor Olson.
Okay, yeah, I think Sean kind of answered my question, but I was just going to say that the people can go ahead after July 1, or even when we get it implemented, they can apply, and that might not be immediate, but at least they can apply, from my understanding. And so it might take a month or two, to get them qualified and in, but they're still going to probably get it, especially if we widen the scope. So that's just what I was going to say, is that, it might not happen July 1, but they'll be able to apply, and if they qualify, then get it within a month or two. Thank you.
Is that it, Council? Well, Councilor Olson, go ahead, please.
Yes. Does the state give you any estimates as to when they might have the data, so we could use their data to figure out who needs this discount and who doesn't?
Go ahead, Sean.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me 1 second.
Are they talking about a month, 6 months, a year? How long are they talking about?
Well, the CSC would be the ones who have that data because they're the ones determining eligibility for that program for Lynn County residents right now. We have questions into them regarding how many current City of Albany residents they would know today how many qualify. We're just waiting for that answer from them. Our goal would be to find efficiencies in there. If they've already qualified for the Oregon LIHEAP program, the energy program, then it may be efficient for the city to go, well, then they would already qualify for the low income program for the city services fee too. And those are the conversations that we're waiting on a few answers from CSC on. But
And
we're
my
not waiting.
question is, do they give you any estimates as to when they can give you the numbers?
We would expect to hear back from them any day. And I do need to remind them that we're waiting for an answer on that. We don't expect a long delay on those numbers.
Good, okay. Well, I suggest we use them if it's imminent. I would think it'd come in before July.
Thank you, Councilor Olson. Thank you, Sean. Councilor, excuse me, just a minute. Councilor Johnson, is your hand still up? Councilor Johnson. Can you put your hand down then? Okay, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I was just going to, it was pointed out to me that when I use the phrase across classes, I need to remind people that what that means is across residential versus commercial. It's not income classes or socioeconomic classes. It's simply the class that we use, the way we use it in this regard.
Yes.
Clarification, Peter.
That's a sensitive term these days. Thank you.
Yes, it is. So is that in the discussion, council? Peter's presentation is done, or am I correct, Peter? It is, okay. So next thing on the agenda is we're going to recess to executive session to discuss labor relations per ORS 192.660 subsection C. And I have a script to read. The city council will now meet in executive session for the purpose of discussing labor relations per ORS 192.660-Delta or Delta. Representatives of the news media and designated staff and other persons shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other participants will be moved into a waiting room, or you can leave and rejoin once in a few minutes. Your screen will display the message, please wait. The meeting host will let you in soon. When the council returns to open session, participants remaining in the waiting room will be readmitted to the meeting. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during executive sessions, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision will be made in this decision of executive session. I'll now recess the meeting to executive session at 5:56 p.m. May 24th, 2021. go ahead and do your thing.
Okay, everybody is back with us.
I now recess the executive session at 6:49 PM, May 24th, 2021. Any discussion? Matilda, Councilor Novak, your hand's still up. I now reconvene the regular session at time 6:40. Where are we at? Clock. 6:50.
Okay.
Motions, is there any motions?
Do we need to do a motion to? No, I don't think so. I think we just gave them direction.
Yeah, we just gave them direction today. Okay, next item on the agenda is a business from the council. And on my screen, Councilor Olson is first.
I don't have anything, Your Honor. Thank you.
Councilor Novak.
I just want to say that I greatly appreciate your bearing with me, everyone. I'm learning. I trust that the next time we discuss any of these things, I will know a whole lot more than I do now. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you much, Councilor Novak. Councilor Kopsinski.
Nothing.
Nothing today. Councilor Bartholomew.
Still here?
Not at this time.
Councilor Smith.
Nothing.
Councilor Johnson.
Nothing, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. And all I have this evening is my grandson is no longer contagious. He's asymptomatic and he's tested negative, so I'm happy about that. And one of my goddaughters had her child this weekend, and so it's been a good week for us. And other than that, I have nothing else. And I think the city manager has a report for us this evening. So Peter, you have the floor.
Mayor, thank you for the opportunity, but I have nothing more to add to what you've heard.
Okay, thank you. At that time, I'll adjourn the meeting at 6:51 on May 24th, 2001. All of you have a great evening and enjoy your family and go watch the Blazers beat up somebody. Have a good one now.
Denver. Good night.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.